Good afternoon. It is the appointed hour, so let's go ahead and get started. As you know, our first order of business is always the fire code. In the event a fire alarm should sound, please remain in the auditorium and stay seated. Should there be a need to evacuate, a Springmore staff member will direct you on how to leave in an orderly fashion. Please remember not to use the elevators and to go to a red pole once you're outside. If you will, silence your phones, please, and we'll go ahead. Welcome. It's been a long, hot summer. It's been a long, hot summer. I guess we're all ready for fall as we now go into September. I think most of us are aware this is Patriots Day, the 22nd anniversary of 9/11, and so we're thankful to have move on in some ways from that. You probably were not allowed to ignore the door, the table by the door if you came in this way. The Health Center Auxiliary is soliciting volunteers to help with some of their activities. Peg Bedini, will you say a word on behalf of the Endowment Committee?
I just want to take a minute to express the thanks of the Endowment Committee for all those of you who did anything to help our yard sale last week. If you donated something, if you shopped and bought something, or if you volunteered, all of those things were necessary. And I am happy to tell you that we made close to $3,200. So it was well done. And I would particularly like to recognize Elaine Gillespie, who took over his chair this year. Elaine, please stand up, and did a great job. The other part of it that is wonderful is I wish all of you could have seen how much some of the staff enjoyed coming in and purchasing. They had a wonderful time, particularly when we got to the end of the day and we said you can fill a bag. Everything you put in it, it comes to $5. And they had a great time. And that's one of the reasons we do it. So thank you again. We'll see you next year.
Thank you. I would like to ask everyone who had any role in volunteering for the yard sale to raise your hand. A lot of volunteers takes a whole lot of people to make it work like it did. Brandon, you have some announcements and some people to introduce.
Hi, good afternoon. Wanted to recognize a couple of people before we get started. First, recognize one of our board members who's here in attendance, Mr. Bill Baxley. Baxley, if you want to stand up for a second and wave. Is anybody else here from the board or the resident endowment? Is Ms. Walton here? Oh, there's Ms. Walton. Okay, so Ms. Walton is on our board as well, so thank you. I think that's everybody that's here today, so thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. And also I'd like to introduce two of our newest employees that are working in our life enrichment department. I think y'all have probably met at least one or maybe both of them, but Allison Brantley is our new trip coordinator. And then we have Leah Ray. Ray, is that right? Yes, sir. Yes, so Leah is going to be taking Brenda's place, who I know had a very nice retirement party on Friday. I was not able to attend. I was out of town, but I got to wish her well before I left. So Leah will be taking her position, and then and Allison will be doing all the trips, and it's a new position that got approved this year, and I'll talk more about that in my presentation. But yeah, I just wanted to welcome them and let everybody put a face with a name. So, all right, thank you, ladies. All right. Let's see. Lori, you want to come up and say a few things? Okay, yep.
Good afternoon. Just a couple of quick announcements. One, this upcoming Friday in the Great Room is the Rise Against Hunger meal packaging event. Thank you to so many of you who have volunteered. There's always time to volunteer, so please let either Justin or myself know. And also, upcoming in October, we are going to be expanding Pathways. It's called Pathways Expansion Team, and we're working together. And if you think of mind, body, and spirit, we work with the Resident Life Department as well as Carrie Ritchie and the Wellness Department. And you'll keep your eyes open in Pathways for a series on mindfulness coming up in October. So we look forward to sharing that with you soon. Thank you very much.
I'd like to recognize Jan Christensen, who is chair of our nominating committee.
Got to lower this thing for somebody like me. Hello. Each year, the executive committee of our Residents Association is asked to make a 5-member nominating committee, and these people will make a slate of officers for the next year. And I would like to introduce the 4 others who worked with me. Tracy Hurley, Lib Rayford, Harriet Ross, and Shirley Obercash. If any of you are here, and I hope you are, please stand. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you. We convened in the middle of August for the purpose of nominating residents to assume leadership of the association in 2024. And our nominees are as follows. President Alan Page, and please stand again if you are here. Vice President Jim Bundy. He's taking care of the video. Secretary Barbara Smith. And then we nominate 4 directors. Director Judy Allen. Director Sylvia Doles, rather. I know her as well as I know myself, practically. Director Jack Gebbe, who I believe is on vacation with his family at this point. And Director John Robinson. Now, each of these nominees affirm their willingness to serve if they are elected. And the committee believes that each of these nominees is very well qualified and will execute their duties to the very best of their abilities. As you may have noticed if you saw some of the signs on the bulletin boards, if you have additional nominations, you can make them from the floor right now. And you also would have had the agreement of the person you nominate, so no surprises. Do I see anyone standing with an additional nomination? Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. According to our bylaws, if there are no other nominations, it is my responsibility to declare that this slate of offices is elected by acclamation. So, thank you for your support. I've appreciated your support during this year and look forward to working with you through the next year as well. So, I'll now turn the program over to Brandon. This is our semi-annual meeting of residents with management and the board. So it's all yours, Brandon.
Thank you, sir. Let me get back here to these slides real quick. Okay. Well, I forgot to recognize two other people that's going to be helping me today, and that is Kyle Dilday from our management company here in the back, and our associate director Brad Dilday. So they're going to answer a couple of questions whenever we get to the resident question portion. But I'm going to start off with the presentation, the budget presentation, and we'll go from there. All right. Well, the first thing I wanted to go over, which I think everybody is aware of, and everybody has already seen this, but this is our meal plan comparisons for the regular meal plan and the reduced meal plan. So the regular meal plan is over on the left for single and double occupancy, and on the right is the reduced meal plan for single and double occupancy. I'll just go over the first two, as the only thing that differs is that the double occupancy is just double the amount of money that you would get or receive in a credit. So the regular meal plan this year, it will be $549 dining dollars for allowance for meals. And then you can carry over a maximum of a whole month, $549. So you can carry that amount over. There's zero credit given to your monthly billing statement, and any amounts that you go over will be put on your balance for your monthly service fee. No action is required to stay on the regular meal plan. So you don't have to do anything, and the renewal starts every October 1st. So about 20 days or so, we'll probably need to know what you guys are going to do. But if you do the reduced meal plan, you'll see that you're going to be allowed $379 dining dollars, zero carryover. So if you don't use it, you lose it type thing, and nothing carries over to the next month. But you get a $170 credit to your monthly billing statement. And then same thing's effective. Any amount that you go over goes on to your monthly statement. You do have to sign up for this every year. So we need to know by October 1st if you're going to be on the reduced meal plan or not. So I got a question in here to answer I'll talk about in a minute, but just want to go over those just one last time. May help with the conversation here and a couple of resident questions. But the overview for our presentation today is we're going to talk about the operating budget goals, the significant changes from this year's budget to next year's budget, total operating revenues, how each dollar is budgeted, Springmore Inc. operating budget summary, and then we'll talk about the 2024 rate increases, and then we'll do historical rate increases. And I want to mention that a lot of questions that were submitted by residents were all great questions, by the way. So if you submitted those, thank you. It's probably the best batch of questions I've ever had. Were really good content. A lot of the answers are going to be answered in this. A lot of the questions will be answered in this presentation. I'll reference to it now, and then I'll reference to it again. So just wanted to make sure y'all know that. So how we do our budget is we do a top-down, bottom-up approach where we go over all of our revenue sources, predict what we think our revenue sources are going to be and the amount. Then we have to look at all the expenses and how much they're going to go up. So we're a zero-based budget, so we try to break even. That's how we budget everything. We always look at stuff from a good stewardship standpoint. That's part of our mission statement is provide quality, affordable housing, yet being sensitive to all residents' needs. So we always look at that of how we can provide you the best quality housing, but also to address everything that we need here as a community. And we get a lot of input from people. We sit down with every department head for about an hour and go through their department, and we let them really talk about it, what they want to do this year, if they want to add staff, if they want to add a new program, what expenses they think they can cut down. We really want them to own their department as they manage it, just like they would their own checkbook. So they have a huge buy-in with that, and we give them autonomy to do that. But then we go back as executive management here at Springmore and with the management company to look at that, whittle that down, shave it down, maybe increase it a little bit if we think there's under budgeted, and then get it to where we want it. Then we have the MAC members approve it. We have input from our vendors and our suppliers. And we know how much their certain rates are going to go up on certain things. We'll get input from them, and then it ultimately goes to the board for approval. So what are the significant changes from this year's budget to next year's budget? So our total operating income is increasing by 5% year over year. This is budgeted for this year, next year. And what's really driving that is our increase in our independent living revenue. We're increasing that by 7.5%. And that is mainly due to the occupancy. We've always been budgeted, well, always since I've been here for quite 8 years, we've always been budgeted 95% occupancy. And we're going to increase that to 96% occupancy this year. So that was an area we thought that we could increase and drive a little more to get revenue since expenses were so much higher this year. So we usually achieve 95% every year, so I felt comfortable with that. And remember, 96% occupancy is people actually living in the unit and paying a monthly rate. When we say we're full, we are. We're full. We're full for reserved and occupied. So many times we have 0 to maybe 2 units to actually sell. So I'll have deposits on them, but there may be 10 to 15 units that are not receiving monthly revenue because nobody's actually living in there yet. They're getting them ready to move in, and y'all remember that whole process when you moved in. It takes a couple of months. So that's being increased. But on the flip side, we're the Stewart Health Center operating revenue is only increasing by 2.4%, and that's because we had to reduce the occupancy numbers from 105 paying residents to 100 paying residents. So we've been averaging in the mid-90s this year for paying residents. There may be 105 to 110 people in there at any given day, but we budget for the ones that are actually paying. So, you get 30 E-days a year. You can accumulate up to 90. So a lot of people are staying back there. I say a lot, 10 usually, when they're on their rehab stay. So we're not receiving any money from them. Still paying on your apartment. But realistically, we had to drop that number down to 100 paying residents, which plays another big factor in the rate increase this year. So this is the big part that's driving most everything is the operating expenses, obviously, but it's the personnel costs. The personnel costs from this year to next year is increasing by 8.7%. So I'll kind of break that down and tell you how we got to that. And all of that includes everyone's normal, what we call merit raises or yearly raises from 1% to 4% based on performance. And that also includes across the board increase we had to do for all the departments minus administration. So I know somebody's asked that before, and that's a question in the resident questions about did administration get across the board increase? And no, we did not. But so the personnel cost is playing a huge part in that. You can see the Stewart Health Center, which is our largest department, about over 220 employees. That's increasing by $643,000 year over year, and that is strictly due to wage increases. We had to increase wages for all the CNAs and all the nursing staff. When we were doing our wage studies, we found out, unfortunately, that we were behind in pay in a lot of our areas. It happens really quick, especially in these times. We think it's slowing down now, and usually the health center is we always have to increase that a lot. For CNAs and nurses, that's just the healthcare industry. You got to kind of compete and go up and up each year. But we had to go across all the departments this year and make an adjustment. And this is the first time since I've been here in 8 years that we've done an across-the-board adjustment with departments minus administration. So keep that in mind. Food service, that's up by $521,000 compared to last year. A lot of that's labor. It's also raw food. Raw food is a huge number. We'll get to that in a second. Housekeeping, almost $100,000 increase for their wages. Clinic, $69,000, and security, $69,000. So all of those again are your normal merit increases of 1% to 4%, plus the additional wage increase we had to do to increase starting wages and to bump everybody up to stay on the economy of scale. So that plays a big part, and we've actually had to already start that in 2 departments. So we have already had to start increasing starting wages and higher wages for staff in the health center and both in dining services. And we've been able to fill up our health center with staff and dining services with staff with these increases. So unfortunately, it's, the money does get them in the door, and then once we get them in the door, we hope to keep them, and they, Springmore becomes home like it has all of us. Employee health insurance, that's going to be up by about 10%, we think. That's still an unknown at this point. We usually find that out pretty late in the year. Property tax. Anybody know how much we pay property tax? Next year, $803,000 for property tax. So that increased 6.8%. Anybody know how much raw food costs a year? $2.1 million. And our utilities, all the utilities here to run Springmore over 11 acres enclosed, $1.4 million. So that's your water, your gas, power, all your utilities. So I remember the first time I signed the electricity check here, I was pretty shocked just for 1 month. So that's just, and if you have, if you talk to family, have kids, you're hearing that or seeing it at the grocery store, or property taxes. I think everybody's going to get a property tax increase this year. And utility costs we know are going up. So if you look at our operating revenue, over 21 million is in our independent living. We average about 475 independent residents every year. And then our second largest is the Stewart Health Center at over $11 million. And that's what we are budgeting for with the 100 paying residents and the 96% occupancy, which is about 475 residents, roughly 480 to get the 21. Then you'll see home care. Home care plays a big part, over $1 million in home care, and then other revenue sources. That could be catering, it could be personal training, it could be guest rooms, it could be guest meals. We have about 40 some odd different line items that equal all the other. So total revenue of over $35 million. So this is an important slide that will answer a lot of questions in the resident, in one resident question. But this is a neat little thing that Philip created years ago, and I always like to use this, and it's how each dollar is budgeted, and you see how each dollar is broke down, and you'll see that 23%, almost a quarter of all of our expenses for within a dollar, go to support the Stewart Health Center. So just remember that. That is a big part of how each dollar is budgeted at Springmore. Second, no surprise, is food service, 20 cents. So we do about 1,000 meals a day and almost 600 residents. That's a big chunk. The next one is reserves. I think everybody knows what the reserves are. I'll answer that in another question, but that is when, fortunately, those compressors went out a couple of weeks ago. It was so hot and we had to get those in. Those weren't cheap. Those were about $50,000 or $60,000 to have. So our reserves is like our savings account. So we fund that every month, and that is where the reserves go. And then you can see all the other departments, how they're budgeted. It's just another way of looking at it. Instead of a pie chart, it's just a normal spreadsheet version here. So this is the operating budget with the income and the expenses. You'll see then I just referenced earlier from that pie chart that the total operating income is $35,661,000 and change. We dropped off the zeros. So that's a huge amount, but look at our total operating expenses, $35,717,000. So we try to break as close to zero as we can, but you'll see there's a deficit this year. I feel comfortable in making that up, but the closer we get to zero, the more the rate increase has to go up. So we did the 6.8. Another interesting thing that will come up again, if you make note of the first line item under operating expenses, how much total salaries and benefits are, over 60% of our budget is strictly wages and benefits for our staff. So that's over $21 million of our $35 million expense. So it's a huge part. So all those factors of paying salaries and the increases and the health insurance that you have to do to have staff these days in any position, but especially in a needs-based community where people are serving people, it's very expensive. So that's just kind of interesting, and we'll get back to that in a minute because somebody asked that question. Total reserves, you can see, $4 million. Total food and Sodexo contract, $2.8 million. So 2.1 is already in raw food. The other $700,000 is salaries, supplies, different things like that. All right, so 6.8%. That is what we did across the board. And sometimes we do across-the-board increases, and there's been times, like last year, where we did independent living was a little lower at 5.2, and the health center was 5.5. I will tell you why we did that in a little bit, but something important to point out here is that the overall wage increase that we have budgeted for all the departments, minus administration, because I know it keeps coming up, that is $658,000. That is basically an extra payroll. So that equals 2% of the overall rate increase. So if we would have not had to do this one-time wage increase, and Kyle's going to talk a little bit more about that when he answers a question about rate increases at other communities and what people have done. This is a one-time thing. Like I said, we've done CNAs and nurses before. We've done housekeeping before. We've done dining before. We've never done maintenance. We've never done security. These are just all rates that we just needed to increase the starting wages and then infuse more money into the people that have already been here to stay competitive. So if we wouldn't have had to do that one-time adjustment, it would have been 4.8%. So I think that's very important to remember that 2% of that comes from that wage increase. All right, and historical rate increases. Unfortunately, this year is the highest we've had in quite some time, but again, I just explained why that is. So you'll kind of see how that stacks up to other years. And that is my presentation. So thank you. I'm going to jump into these questions because I know this could take some time. So I'm going to answer about 5 or 6 questions. I'm going to have Brad and Kyle answer a couple of questions, and I'll close it out. If I don't answer, we're not going to say who read the names, but thank you for submitting names. So if I don't answer, if you didn't understand my answer, or if you just don't agree with my answer or whatever, feel free to email me, call me, stop by my office. You know, I'm always here, so I'll be happy to do that. I just it takes a while to go through these, so again, don't hesitate to let all 3 of us know if we don't answer it properly. So, all right, I'm going to get started, and again, some of these have already been answered. So, question number 1 is. You read it thoroughly. I don't want to. What is the percentage of total budgeted expenses for personnel, salaries, and benefits? Well, we just saw that. That is $21 million, or 60.6% of our total budget goes into salaries and personnel costs. So that's the first one. The next question is: are management and higher level employees getting a 6 to 8% raise, and if so, why? No, that we're not. I know. No, we're not getting a 6 to 8% raise, and nobody's getting a 6 to 8% raise. 6.8% was the overall fee increase we had to pass along to y'all for the expenses to try to meet that zero-based budget. But that's a good question. But no. We're not getting 6.8%, and in all seriousness, the normal averages are 1 to 4% based on performance. So that's how we do for all departments. This is a great question. It says Brandon specifically stated in the August resident memo that wages for CNAs, LPNs, and RNs have increased more than other positions. Plus, he noted skilled nursing care being costly. Given this information, why are both independent living and Stewart Health Center fees being treated the same with an identical 6.8% increase? It would seem more equitable to treat these 2 types of resident fees separately to reflect the different increasing costs. And that is a really, really great question. And like I said, we did that last year. We did 5.2 and 5.5, but that is not really. We can't do that every year because the way we're set up as a CCRC, as a community, the nursing home can't support itself. That's why on that pie chart, I made a big deal about 21 cents out of every dollar goes to support the health center. So we all have to pay for that. And it cannot support itself. And that's why the largest chunk of money goes to supporting that health center. So that's just not how a CCRC is set up. And the other reason is we don't want to grow the gap of the independent living monthly service fees and the health center service fees so great that it becomes so expensive to live in the health center. And that's going to drive up all the subsidy requests, which is going to be more money on the residents anyway. So we got to try to keep that gap. In a year or two, we may do 4.2 and 4.5, but this was too much of an increase that we didn't want the gap to grow any further than it is right now, to keep it affordable for everybody, especially in the health center. So that was a very good question. All right, the next one is perfect timing, by the way. I'm going to preface this by saying that I got an email from our account rep for Spectrum saying they worked out ESPN and Disney. Have y'all checked it? It's okay, great. All right, good. I'll take full credit for that. I emailed him, and somebody emailed me over the weekend and said, hey, I'm hearing that Spectrum's giving out discounts to people. Does that apply to Springmore? I said, I don't know. I'll find out. So I emailed the guy, and he said, here, call this number. Just classic, call this number. I was like, no, you tell me if you can give me a discount or not. He said, let me check out. And he said, well, you're the lucky charm. He said, I just got word that they've worked it out and it's back on the air. So all it took was one email. That's right. Yeah, I wish. 6-8% too. So no. So this came. We always have questions about the internet and cable, which are all good questions. So a few years ago, the issue of improved TV internet was raised. Looking forward to a lower cost group service to residents with fiber optic service on the horizon. Can we expect some action? I am not sure about that. That is hard to tell, but I can tell you I am working with Spectrum right now to renew our contract with them, and within the new proposed contract that I'm hoping to do this week, that everyone will receive more channels. The NFL package, I think I like the Pac-10, so a couple of other like sports packages, and about 100 more channels at a cheaper rate. So we'll be able to save about $20,000 a year on this, and we'll be getting a rebate which we can apply to the fee each month. So they were able to work out an agreement with us. So I'll have more about that when that happens, but we're trying to get that all squared away. The second one is Springmore residents' cost for Spectrum internet service has doubled in less than 4 years to $85. Remember, that's something that residents pay separate. We don't provide internet for everybody yet. We're working on the whole Wi-Fi thing, and we're going to start this year to phase it in, but it's going to take a year or two to get that done. But remember, that's something extra you pay for. But in response to a question from a prior year, Brandon requested a bulk internet rate from Spectrum for Springmore residents, but was rebuffed by Spectrum. We have no alternative to Spectrum internet service. So since so many non-Springmore households are cutting the cable in favor of streaming services via the internet, could we have that option also? That could work like our meal plan option. Sign up in October to give up cable for a year, thus freeing up resident funds to use a streaming service more closely aligned with their viewing desires. If we can't do anything about the increasing Spectrum internet costs, perhaps we could reduce our cable TV bill. Thanks for your consideration. So, as I said a second ago, we are able to lower the rate, and all that goes into the monthly service fee. Again, it's $20,000 on a $35 million budget. Is not huge, but every little bit helps. So we are getting a savings there. But
there are alternatives now to Spectrum Internet, and if you look around, there are a number of alternatives using the 5G telephone system. So just look around and be smart about it.
Okay. All right. That's something you may want to talk to Mr. Robinson about. It's not my cup of tea, so. I know he's on are you on the IT committee, Mr. Robinson?
I'm on the, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Get my answer here. All right. Sorry. All right, so So to answer the question about cutting off the cable, that's just not an option because we pay a bulk rate for 524 units. So there are 524 units we pay for. So if we, let's say, wanted to cut off Mr. Page's unit, and cut it off here to where he can't see it at Springmore, we're still going to pay for that unit. I mean, we're still going to pay for that. We pay for 524 if you use it or if you don't. So that's just one of those concepts, again, with the CCRC living, that it's a monthly service fee, and you may not use transportation, the pool, exercise classes, the clinic, but that's all in our monthly service fee. So that's the way our cable is done as well. In the future, hopefully there will be more options, like Mr. Robinson said, for the internet, but for the cable, it's just tough. And I've talked to every retirement community in the area, and they all are Spectrum. So, all right, let's see here. All right, the next question is, given the size of the monthly fee increase and chronic staffing issues in all departments, has management considered reverting to biweekly housekeeping service or giving a biweekly option to residents similar to the 21/30 meal plan? I'm sure IT could find an easy-to-use scheduling app. So the good thing is we don't have chronic staffing issues right now because we've been able to raise our rates to make sure that we don't have chronic staffing issues. And to my knowledge, housekeeping was never a huge issue. So we've got that under control. The next part is, it goes back to what I just said. We're set up in a fee for not a fee, as a monthly service fee, all-encompassing fee. And we made the exception for the meal plan, which I'm very glad that we were able to do that. But we can't pick and choose the services we want. That's just not our model. But if you live in a community that has fee for service, where everything's a la carte, you could pay to have housekeeping once a month, twice a month, never have it, transportation, all that stuff. But that's just not how we're set up. And if we start picking and choosing what people want, it gets away from our whole concept, our whole contract of how we are modified B contract. So unfortunately, that's just how we're set up. And I think it's better that way. And it keeps costs down for everybody, as we can buy everything kind of in bulk. So, all right. Let's see. The next one. On attachment E of the 811 resident memo, I did not see mention of the $5 surcharge for guest meals. Has this been discontinued? If not, what resident behaviors and what resident behavior change is intended to accomplish? The 30% surcharge serves as an inhibitor for having family members attend. So we did not get away from the $5 surcharge. We just don't have the guest meal price listed on that form. That's something I can easily include. We've just never had that up there before, the guest meal price. We don't have personal training listed on there. And private transportation, but the $5 surcharge did not go away for guest meals. It just was not listed on that page, and we'll make sure we do that next year. It's a good question. What are the options available to us for spending the excess monies we have accumulated other than buying meals in the grill or bistro? Well, one thing that you can do that we changed a while back with the MAC and the executive committee is that residents can buy employee meal tickets to give to employees. So that is a way that you can use those dining dollars to buy a meal ticket for an employee. So we'll get to that, the rest of that here in just a second, but you can do that. So next, will the proposed $18 meal fee cover the cost of dining services? Yes, we think the $18 a meal, the $5.49 a month will cover all the raw food, all labor. That's what we have budgeted. So unless there's some drastic increase, we feel good about that. How many residents use a reduced meal plan? Well, we have to October 1st for y'all to sign up. Right now, we're at approximately 150 people. approximately 60 or more residents participate in out to lunch/dinner trips each month. Does dining services prepare meals for that number that will not eat here? No, they do not. So lunch is tougher than supper. So Brenda was really good. I've already asked Leah and Allison to make sure that the dining services knows if there's a large group going out to lunch or for supper. We do batch cooking. I think everybody knows that. We'll make 20 pieces of fried chicken, 20 pieces of meatloaf, and as it whittle down, we'll do a fresh batch. So in supper time, when we have a lot of people eating, it's much easier to predict. If there's 30 people not going to be there, it's not going to make a huge difference. They don't really need to know, but we've asked them to submit that information, so dining does know. But lunch is where it's really tough because there's not as many people eating lunch in the dining room. So if we have 30 people out to lunch, we may have a very sparse crowd at the lunch service. So we are doing that. We're letting them know. The next one. The number of residents has now recovered from COVID, but appears that fewer residents are eating here, and the number of dining service staff, particularly supervisors, has increased. Is this a true assumption? It's true that it seems like more people are not eating in the dining room as much as they used to. A lot of people are going through the line, but no, staffing is not drastically increase or decrease. It's probably got back to where it needs to be because of our wage increases. We've been able to get full staff again. But no, we stick with the budget. So what we have budgeted for 2023, we're not going over that amount of staff. And then if obviously we don't need people, we won't hire them back. But more people are I'd say more people are going through the line than they are doing weighted service. It seems like, but staff has not drastically changed. All right, this is the last one I'm going to talk. Well, I got two more, and then these gentlemen talk. The next one is I purchased an employee gift card to use my dining overages. I was charged $22, but realized employees do not pay but around $5. My question is, why can the gift card not be stamped for more usage per card? That reason is because the $5 $4.50, I think it is exactly, is an employee perk or benefit. So we encourage employees to eat here. It's a pretty nutritious meal. It's well-rounded. They don't have to leave campus. They can stay here. They can eat with their friends, and we want to provide that as a perk for them. And that's a common thing within retirement communities. So that is an employee perk that's only offered to residents. So agree with it or not, if you want to buy a meal ticket for a guest, for an employee, it's going to be the guest cost. So it's no different than bringing your son or daughter or your grandkids to eat at $22. If you buy a meal ticket for employees, it's still going to be $22. That's only for the employees to use as an employee perk. All right. And I think I answered this at the very beginning, but at a recent event, Brenda introduced her replacement and named a person who will be responsible for trips. Is that an additional position, or is Leah retiring? Leah is not retiring. She is recovering at home. She had surgery. I think a lot of y'all know that. So she's going to be out a couple of months. But yes, Allison is an additional staff member that we did have planned in the budget, but we did have her start a couple of months early because I knew Brenda was retiring and I knew Leah was going to be out. So we were thankfully able to get Allison in to spend some time with Leah a little bit and Brenda, and then was able to have Leah here with Brenda for about a week. So yes, that's how that's going to work, and they're both working out great. I know Allison has already been to some places, and you've been here, what, 3 weeks? Over a month. Geez, okay, over a month. There we go. So yeah, so she is. They're both doing well. And the next one is, what is the cost of printing Pathways each month? It costs approximately $2 to print one Pathways. So remember, if you want to go paperless, you can do that to save that. But remember, it's all or nothing with paperless. So if you don't want Pathways being printed, but you want something else, you remember it's all or nothing. So it's just too much to keep up with this and this mailbox, that and that mailbox for this person. And So, but $2 per packet for Pathway. So, all right, I'm going to have Mr. Kyle come up and speak, and then we'll get some more.
And I too will say good afternoon. When I came up here in 1987, I didn't have to wear reading glasses like these young guys, but can't see anything anymore, so it doesn't happen. And I will say too, my Spectrum on Thursday, I got my bill and it went from $79.99 to $85 too. So I understand. I get that. I have two questions that Brandon asked me to touch base on. I'm going to do the lengthier, more difficult one to follow to start with, and then do the easier one secondly. But the first question, I will read it to you, and then because it is, again, a very good question. It's my understanding that the Springmore Endowment Fund Assist Residents in Need is limited to the total amount of income received by the fund. In the event that the endowment fund income is not sufficient to support such needs, I understand that any shortfall is made up by the charges to the Springmore operating income from the form of additional operating expenses. If this is correct, it would certainly seem a reasonable and humane approach. If all this is factual, my question would relate to the handling of additional Springmore operating expenses. In other words, could they somehow be passed through the endowment fund and treated as a donation in order to be tax deductible by individual residents in a manner similar to the annual medical expense information? If this is not correct, a general explanation would be great. Well, the short answer is, let me put it this way, because I see some blank looks, and I had to read it 3 or 4 times to be sure I got it too. I think to summarize it, the question is there any way that the subsidy that is being paid, could it be run through the endowment fund so that you could get a tax deduction out of it? That's in summary what they're saying. The short answer before I give the explanation is no. No, there's no way we can do it. And the reason we can't is pretty simple. And I tried to make some notes because this is a big topic that could take a long time and we don't need it to. So I'm going to try to stick with some notes that I made to stick with it. So forgive me for reading a little bit. But first of all, I do know Springmore Incorporated is you. That is the residents. The endowment fund is a separate entity. They are two totally separate entities. Springmore Inc. Incorporated, Springmore Endowment Fund Incorporated. They're not the same entity. So obviously we can't blend two entities. The endowment fund does not have any responsibility for expenses or any liabilities for a resident. It is a fund. It is a donation that you make to that fund. It is not responsible for any expenses or liabilities for any residents. In fact, the endowment fund was started a whole lot of years ago. I came in 1987, and I believe we had started it around that time that we started formally having an endowment fund. And that the purpose of the endowment fund was started for the charitable purposes of Springmore. That's very generic. But part of the charitable purposes of Springmore is to help to assist residents who run out of money by no fault of their own, which is what you know of as the subsidy. So when people are subsidized and they have run out of money by no fault of their own, we do a very serious analysis. We take it to our board of directors. They go through it, and we then they make a decision as to whether that person should receive a subsidy or not. So that is one of the charitable purposes of Springmore. We've never done anything but that to this date. But a charitable purpose of Springmore could be to buy a new bus. I mean, there could be any other options that are there as charitable purposes. But we have only to date chosen to use the subsidy as one of the purposes that is being looked at. And I guess one way to think of it is the endowment fund is there to assist the operating account for paying of the subsidies. Assist, make a donation to. So I'm very visual. So I think of the endowment fund and the operating, and the endowment fund can make a donation back to the operating fund, which it does one time per year. When we initially started this, and back in about 1988 or 89, Mr. Dan Stewart was on our board, who Stewart Health Center is named for, and Mr. Stewart asked the board, we want to protect the assets of the fund, but we also want to use the fund for some charitable purposes of Springmore. So the board voted to take 1/2 of the proceeds that were obtained in the endowment fund per year, which would be the interest and dividends that is received, and they would donate that back to Springmore Inc., the other entity, that would help offset the cost for you as residents paying for those people who couldn't pay their own way. So that was where it began, and it was that way for a number of years. I see Mr. Callaway there. I don't remember what year it was, but I would say 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, the board, the Springmore Endowment Fund Board of Directors, decided that perhaps we should start looking at doing 100% of the interest and dividends that we receive to help offset the expenses for Springmore Inc., which ultimately helps you as a residents in the Springmore Incorporated side of my equation. So that was done a number of years ago, and so now the board each year takes a look at how much we have earned in interest and dividends, and that much money is donated back to Springmore Inc., the residents, in order to offset the expense. So again, a kind of a shorter synopsis of that is, in essence, yes, I understand the question, that the operating expenses of Springmore do, in effect, increase, because when someone gets a subsidy, we don't pass money between entities. It's literally, if you owe $4,000 this month and you get a $2,000 subsidy that's been approved, you only pay $2,000. So the operating income, in essence, is short that $2,000 that you're being subsidized. So in essence, it does, therefore, increase the expenses on the operating side, which is why the endowment fund then turns around once a year and makes a donation back to Springmore Inc. to help offset it. So it's a lot within that, and it's a huge discussion that can be had, but that's, in essence, how it works. And so they're two separate entities, and we can't run one entity through the other entity because they don't do the same thing. They're totally different entities. I will remind you, though, that one other piece of that is when a resident contract does terminate here at Springmore, it is in your contract that Springmore has a right to withhold any amount of subsidies that were granted to you. So if you get a refund back, Springmore can withhold the subsidy amount up to the total subsidy amount that was granted to you during your time. And that does happen. So that also helps the operating expenses or your fees to be protected. So that's how that whole process works. But again, the short answer was better, wasn't it? No was the short answer, and that was the best. Okay. The other question I have is, how does our monthly fee increase compare with other retirement communities in the area? And so I've looked at 9 other communities that are around us, and I'm not going to call names because you'll understand in a second, some of these have not been announced, so you can just guess, and I won't tell you whether you're right or wrong, but I think you probably can make a pretty good guess. But out of 9 communities, in 2023, the year we're in now, in 2023, where we did, as Brandon pointed out, an independent living of 5.2% for the year that we're in now, when we compare that to what places did, they did anywhere from 5.8 to 10% fee increases last year, 9 communities, which was an average of 7.6%. So of 9 communities I looked at in the general area, in general had to expand sunk quite a bit, but very close to us in some cases. We were much lower last year in our fee increase. As Brandon pointed out, we really had very difficult time trying to figure out what the salary issue was. It was all across the board, if you can back up a year ago in your mind, that people could not get staff. We did not have people. We could not hire people. And salaries were going out the roof, and people would give raises literally. We could call a competitor and say, what are you paying today? And literally in 1 month, they were paying $1 more an hour. And we're going, well, how do we compete with that? So that's what drove us to this year at the 6.8%. Somewhat is because we did 5.2 last year, which we thought was reasonable and would meet our needs. But we found out as the year went on, it didn't. One thing that hurts us at Springmore from a competition point of view is that we do our rate increases, October 1st. Most places do theirs January 1st. So as I'm comparing now and trying to find out what other people are going to do for 2024 to compare your 6.8% to them, it's pretty impossible because they're going, well, we're just kind of doing a draft of our budget now. We really aren't into it at all. But I did get two commitments. One was 8%, and one was 6 up to 8%. And they're not sure exactly what. One very close to us was 6 to 8%. So then I said the easiest way to look at it is try to compare the last 2 years, because we were lower last year, we're a little higher this year than we were last year. So as I looked at those 9 communities, what I found out was that comparing Springmore to the other communities, if you take the past 2 years to look at the general, the average was 12% between 2 years. One of the communities down in the North Hills area decided that they did 8.7% at the beginning of last year, but the year before they did 12.2. So they had basically a little over a 20% increase in 2 years. But when I look at all the communities that we compared to, everybody was right at 12%. And when I look at ours at 5.2 last year, 6.8 this year, ironically, it was not a plan. It's right at 12%. So I think that to answer the question, we are right in line. When you look at the actual monthly fees you pay, I was able to find 6 other communities that I could compare to, and Springmore is dead in the middle. There's 3 that the monthly service fee is higher, 3 that the monthly service fee is lower. It's about a $200 to $250 swing. So no one is more than $250 higher than us, and no one is more than $250 lower than us. So we're pretty much in the middle. So after my comparison, I hope that answers the question. I feel pretty confident that we're right in the arena that we should be. Unfortunately, it is high, and 6.8% is higher than we wanted, as Brandon pointed out, but he's tried to point out what our points were to get to that point. So with that, sir, I think that's my 2.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm glad nobody threw any tomatoes at me yet for the cave-like atmosphere I created downstairs. I assure you the painters will be back Tuesday afternoon, and the color will be corrected to what it was supposed to be. So it's supposed to be a lighter, like a beige, just a light, bright color, not the Bat Cave. So I do apologize for that. But I'll get to my questions now. My first question is, how much has and will the health center renovation cost, and is that in the current budget? And as of our last payment app that was submitted at the end of August, we are at $4.9 million spent, and that is on a loan amount of $7.8 million. And we do have a set amount that we pay monthly, and that was included in the 2024 budget. And my next question, I would like to know why 4 parking places are being reserved for e-cars when there are not enough spaces for residents' regular cars. No one at Springmore has electric cars, and no one is likely buying them since people here are not buying cars but getting rid of them. It is becoming impossible to find a parking place near the buildings in both North and South Village at certain times of the day. Those parking places need to be released. This is obviously another marketing gimmick to keep up with the competition. That statement is somewhat true. It is a marketing opportunity, I feel like, because all new residents and everyone else in our community does offer EV parking spaces. It's not unique to us. We didn't decide we wanted to do it. Everyone else is offering it, and it is an expectation of a lot of the new people that we are marketing to. So at this point, each pedestal that we have has 2 charging ports. So we reserved 2 parking spaces for each port. That's 2 spaces in North Village and 2 in South Village. I have talked to security. They're not strictly enforcing those as being EV parking only. We plan on continuing that until demand necessitates us putting the metal sign and kind of making it more strict. But for now, I mean, if you're coming and parking for an hour and that's the only space, take that space. It's okay. But we do want to leave it open if we can when there's other spaces available, so that if someone comes on campus, we do have plenty of visitors. We have a couple of staff members and some other folks that want to use those spaces when they're available. So the next question I have is, there is a lack of lighting in the area at the end of Valley, which is a serious safety issue. Speed limit is 15 miles per hour, but not observed, particularly by workers and food trucks Residents are often walking around that blind curve, sometimes in dark clothing, many hard of hearing, and it gets dark in the winter and is a very dangerous situation. If you can't picture, what I interpreted this is at the end of the Valley building where you're going around the backside where resident parking and the wellness center is. And that's a great suggestion. I think we need to look into some additional lighting back there. The Building and Grounds Committee earlier this year had us investigate putting a sidewalk all the way around that bend as well. So that's another alternative we'll look at, and I think that's something that we can probably work through and find a better alternative for everybody to keep us safe. So those are my 3 questions.
All right. We have 2 more, I think. Yep, 2 more. Okay. So last 2 questions. So this question involves the administration operating budget. In particular, I'd like to know the expenses and revenues associated with community services. When this initiative was announced a few years ago, pre-COVID, I spoke up on behalf of other residents and myself, questioning the wisdom of the opening up of Springmore services to non-residents and the community, fearing that our fees would increase unnecessarily. Since then, the residents have not ever been informed of what community services have been provided by or to whom, or how effective they have been or incurred costs and received revenues. Whereas residents can understand administrative programs that benefit them directly, we have no basis yet for understanding how community services benefits residents in any way. So to sum that up, the community services line item no more exists. That is right. That is pre-COVID. That was years ago, and we were looking to and still looking at ways to provide services to the greater community. We had this. A lot of communities have something called CCRC Without Walls, and that is basically that you put down a deposit, a membership, and you're on the and you're on the waiting list, and you can come and use all the amenities of the community: the dining room, the pool, the exercise room, everything. Well, we decided against that because we didn't want anybody, the dining rooms to be full, the pools to be full, all that stuff. We don't need. I mean, we didn't need all that extra stuff. I mean, if we were dying on a vine, yes, that'd be a great opportunity, but thankfully that is not the case. We're pretty healthy. I said we got a long waiting list. Yes, expenses are more, but we got people coming in, and we're going to have a good year this year and a good year next year. So that never came to fruition. But 2 things I will mention that has come to fruition is what Lori mentioned earlier, Pathways expansion. We're looking to just expand what we offer at Springmore to our residents. So we're looking to see what's something maybe outside the box that we don't offer now that y'all would like. We offer a lot of great traditional things, arts and crafts, trips, dining, all those great things that are going to continue, but what else could we do? How could we stay, progressive to some people moving in and to provide more options? So kind of like the art studio a couple of years ago, the art classes and the fused glass and all that. That was something new, so we're trying to find some more things like that. And secondly, a lot of those efforts were directed toward providing home care outside of Springmore. We've been working on that for several years, and we on and off with COVID, and we're hoping to start marketing that in actually next month. So we're working to provide home care just like you would have right at home or visiting angels. We're going to be able to provide that, but we're going to start off very slow and just offer it to our residents on our wait list within a very small mile radius to get any interest, to see if there's any interest. If there are 3 people that want it, 10 people, then we'll hire accordingly. And then if we need more, we'll go to a greater area with people on our wait list, and then eventually the idea is to spread it out to all of Raleigh. So it would just be a great way to serve people that may never come to Springmore in any form or fashion, and it's kind of like I think Kyle can probably explain this more, or he knows the saying better, but, why not do it? I mean, if everybody else is doing it, why shouldn't Springmore do it, Somebody else is going to do it before us if we don't, the Cypress, Cardinal. So, we should be the provider of choice, and I think our name and reputation will serve us well with that. So that's where a lot of efforts with the community services went after that. So more info on that. That won't affect y'all, but it's just a neat service we can provide. Last is a three-part question. It says, by my calculations, comparing fee income from 2023 to 2024, the income increase is actually 2.2%, not 6.8%, as stated in the cover memo. Can somebody please explain? I could not make the numbers work to 6.8%. So the 6.8% again is the fee we had to pass along to cover the expenses to get to that break-even budget. So it's not the revenue for 2003 and 2004. That is projected to be 5%. We went over that earlier. The significance from 2003 to 2004, it's a 5% increase, 7.5% in independent living, because we went to 96% occupancy, and then 2.4% increase, which dropped a little bit because we had to reduce from 105 to 100, which is right at 5%. But the 6.8 is what we, of course, had to pass along to y'all to cover the expenses. The next one are the reserve amounts for capital reserve funding. Are the reserves amount for capital reserve funding? Our HOA had a setup, and it proved beneficial for our residents' peace of mind. And yes, and I talked about that earlier. You see that our reserves are like the third largest section of each dollar is budgeted. It's the health center, food service, and it's reserves. And just for those examples I used with the compressors, the elevators last year, wash machines here, they're not cheap. Brad, what, 20, 30 grand? How much is it? $32,000 for a wash machine. These are huge wash machines, but we've had them for 38 years. I mean, they're original. I mean, I think we've replaced all of them now. So yes, those reserves, it's like a savings account. It does go to unexpected things like that. And lastly, monthly fee increases of 6.8% are not sustainable and could double monthly fees over 10 to 12 years. Given the residents' demographics and ability to absorb the fee increase, hits of this magnitude, what are leadership's plans to address this issue? I think you've heard a lot from us talking today of how we do our budget, the amount of time and effort that we put in as a staff, as the management advisory committee puts in, as the board puts in, as a management company puts in. We go through every line item. And when I say we go through every line item, Mr. Kyle Dilday will tell you we go through every line item in a very good way, and we shave what we can to whittle down as much as we can to still be able to provide quality care to y'all. So it is. I feel confident that this was an off year. I hope to get back to a normal increase of 3 to 4 or 5%, but I don't know. It's just hard to tell right now. But that's part of the other reason we didn't want to increase the gap of the independent and the health center so much, because it would really increase those prices for the health center. So we're continuing to see how we can save on expenses, negotiate contracts with vendors. When we're interviewing staff members, we try to not going to offer them the highest starting point. We stay at the starting wage and just try to keep expenses under control so we can keep those expenses down. So, well, thank y'all for listening to us for the past over an hour. I hope that explained the rate increase of 6.8. I wanted to personally do the presentation this year. Normally Philip, our controller, does it, but there were so many questions that I could answer from this presentation that I just felt it would be easier for me to do it. And it's the largest one we had in a while, so I kind of wanted to stand up in front of y'all and tell y'all personally why we had to do that. But anyway, if y'all have any questions or anything that I did not answer, please let me know afterwards, or call me or email me, and I'll let Mr. Page take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks to all three of you for the information. We all need to be as well informed about what's going on as we can be. Jim Epps, would you talk to us just briefly about the upcoming programs for our Residents Association meeting?
I can't talk about anything briefly.
Look at the clock. You may not have an audience.
Well, before I give you the programs for the next 2 months, I do want to thank our chaplain, Laurie, for mentioning my previous employer of 55 years. And you didn't hear it? No, she certainly did mention the YMCA. She said our YMCA triangle, spirit, mind, and body, right? Okay, I'm sorry. It was right. She did say spirit, mind, and body, and that's the YMCA triangle. We have 2 more programs for this year, and I think they're going to be good. I know they're going to be good. For October, we're going to have a presentation by 3 of our staff members who have worked with hospice, and they're going to talk with us about hospice. And I think that would be very helpful for our group to know as much as we can about hospice. And then the last program, which will be November the 13th, is one that I'm just really excited about because I've already had a preview of it at my Rotary Club. And that is we're going to have a presentation of the James Webb Telescope. And let me tell you, you won't believe your eyes. Has any of you seen any of the photographs from just a few of us? It will be an amazing program, so I hope that you will all show up. Now, is that all I'm supposed to do? Is that it?
You can, yeah. Let me get to the microphone.
All right, I'll get you back.
Hold it, Jim. If you I'm going to ask Allison if she will draw a ticket out of here. Once I shake these up. Okay. The winning number is 777379.
Oh, my goodness, look at here. What a wonderful presentation you made. Congratulations.
And Leonard, would you draw one out of this? The numbers are smaller on these. Wait a minute. 5259988. Thank you all for coming, and we will meet again on October the 9th and hope to see you around. We adjourned.